What's up? What's up? Welcome to this episode of FIFO. My boy Sam Nang, co-host over here, Danny Marawinski. This is Flow In, Flow Out. The mission here is to help raise the collective vibrations across the whole audience as well as our guests. We got our special guest today, Ben Hughes. So we'll dive into a little bit more about that here in a second. Just a quick reminder, this whole thing started just on a whim. Me and Sam Nang got together. We hadn't really talked to each other since high school, and even in high school we really didn't talk. So this whole thing's very organic, very authentic, and we are releasing episodes every Monday at 6 a.m., Friday at 4 p.m. Catch you on your morning commutes and afternoon commute to help set you up for a week of success and a weekend of success.
Yeah.
So that being said, Sam Nang, you want to say anything?
Yeah. We're on episode 18. That's a lot, consistency, repetition. That's a big part of success and like just being good at something. We started. We didn't really know what we were doing, and then just went with it and try to fill the time and just became creative. And this is what it is right now. And that's how I typically work or operate in my life. Is just kind of do it and then eventually just kind of figure it out and develop it however we go. So I'm in the process of bodybuilding and building our coaching business and networking and meeting new friends. And I wanted I brought on Ben Anderson. Ben is one of my wrestling buddies. We used to wrestle together, high school buddies, and he is a bodybuilder as well too. And a cool story I want to tell about bodybuilding. So there's like 3 bodybuilders that graduated from like Braddock. I think it's like to Ben, it was Ben, and then it was also David Neal, right? And I think there was a guy named Mike Pisano. I think he might have bodybuilded too.
He was a big kind of a fitness father for us, I guess, so to speak, but he never competed.
He never competed. Okay.
He was one that Dave and I kind of hit up for a lot of knowledge. So
Yeah, I didn't start bodybuilding, but deliberately in the beginning. But like in the 9th grade, I was in a weight room all through high school. But then I went to school in Richmond. I was down in Richmond at VCU, and it was interesting. It was a OCB competition, and it was in Richmond. I think it was the Arthur Ashe Stadium, and you and David were competing in that show. Do you remember that show?
I remember that show.
Yeah. I remember. I think I went with a high school buddy named Wasi.
Yeah.
He was. We were both watching, and there was a few other, I think, like Braddock folks there. And then I remember watching, and I was like, "Oh shit, Ben beat fucking David in the bodybuilding," because I do. It was fucking cool, and I was like, I was really inspired by like seeing you guys there. And then I literally did start bodybuilding like deliberately in college because of part of that inspiration, and then just my love for like weightlifting, and it just came and I just started bodybuilding in college. But yeah, man, that's why I brought you on here. I know you got a ton of knowledge. You're in the medical field, you're in the health and fitness field, and we wrestle and we bodybuild together. So I feel like there's would be good conversations that come out from inviting you to the show. So welcome to the show, Ben Anderson.
Thanks, guys,
Yeah,
so
man.
much for having me. When I got the invitation, I was super pumped. I was like, I love the content that you guys are both putting out on your personal profiles on the podcast. And yeah, man, it was an honor to come on and kind of share the story and see what I could kind of contribute. And hopefully somebody listens to this and kind of, picks off a little bit of information to say, oh, okay, well, this isn't just a bunch of guys flexing in the mirror, that there's actually a little bit more of a culture to this,
Yeah.
And part of it, and Danny can appreciate this too on his side, and don't let him fool you, man. He's pretty strong, okay? But basically it's having a love for which bodybuilding is a sport. It's about cultivating discipline is what it is. I mean, there's days that you don't want to get your workout in. You don't want to get to the gym. You had a crappy night's sleep the night before. And listen, I got 3 dogs right now. I got 2 of them sleeping in the bed half the time. So it's like trying to get that regulated. But in any event, so funny enough, I would say that David actually was one of the ones was probably the one that got me into bodybuilding. I was always big into health and nutrition in high school. Read the magazines, the Men's Health, etc. I loved exercise, hitting weights, playing sports. But then, then I found out that he was doing that, and I said, hey, he's about kind of the same size, and that seems like something like he pushed me into it a little bit. So we were over at Jungle's Gym, which is now, I don't even know what it's called in Burke.
It's One Life Fitness.
One Life Fitness.
Yeah, I work out there, but I know the Jungle Gym. I'm familiar with it.
Gotcha. It's nice too. They definitely have really stepped up the gym in terms of what they have. But no, I just was hitting the weights with him afterwards, and the first show, again, you kind of called out and said, yes, I technically was the one that beat him in class, but the same thing happened, when I started the bodybuilding journey 2 years prior. Was we had a competition that was in Woodbridge,
Okay.
and he took first place in class, and I actually took third. So we always had this weird thing where there was always some other competitor, some random person that would take second place. I'm like, no, Dave and I are supposed to be 1 and 2. Like, you don't understand how this works. So I just want to say right now that I want to call his ass out. That I'm going to be 40 years old next year, and I think there's no better time for us to have a rematch. Because right now we're 1 and 1, right? You got trifecta, you know what I mean? So I know all that kid does now apparently now is work, hunt, and lift weights. You know what I mean? So I got my work cut out for me because I'm not hitting the gym as much now as I used to for sure. But I think that there's some little hacks that I've kind of picked up on to say, if I get there this many times this week, I'm also trying to, Danny Boy's got me inspired to say, start running again, even if it's just once a week, kind of putting in the balance to your fitness, I think does a lot. And if you can increase your endurance, that's only going to help with your performance when you're smashing the plates in the gym.
Yeah.
So I gotta say, man, and this is something that I'm starting to learn more in working with Sam Nang on this podcast, and something that I've never had, right? So I've always, you guys have known me. I mean, I'm pretty much the same weight since high school. Like I hit puberty and I just stopped.
Bro.
Like I'm like basically Danny Marowinski from high school. The only thing I'm able to do is grow my facial hair like this. And yes, it does grow in this way. I don't groom it that way. I'm very Joe Dirt in that regard, right? So like one thing that Sam Nang talks a bunch about is the ability to like have master over your body and to sculpt your body in such a way that you want to sculpt it, right? And I've always been like super skinny, scrawny, small guy, and then I got into snowboarding, and then all of my strength came from active movements and snowboarding and things like that. I then went through a ton of injuries, which I definitely want to pick your brain on as far as the orthopedic side of things. And then I ended up getting actually the heaviest I've ever been. The first time that my weight ever fluctuated from 155 was when I took a corporate job, and I blew up to like 185. It was crazy. Like there's pictures of me. I have to find them, but like my face was fat. Like I had a belly. Like it was bad.
And you were drinking at that time too, right?
I was drinking a ton. Yeah. So I cut back on drinking and I quit drinking basically. And then I started biking and then shedded all the weight, and now I'm back down to like pubescent Danny. So it's like it's right. So it's interesting to me, like, and this is the part that I think is fascinating to me is like I had my first experience. Sam Nang brought it up. He's like, hey man, you need to like actually visualize what your body would look like with the fit that you want. Because I've always had like, I've thrown it out to him like, oh, I want the Matthew McConaughey body with the shirt off kind of thing. Like that's the build that I'm looking for, right? But then when I look at myself in the mirror, I don't see how I can do that. But then I had my first experience of like, oh, I could see like if I worked up on my upper chest, which I need to do, right? That would help inflate the upper chest and the shoulders, the back, the traps, things like that. So my question to you is, when you first got into bodybuilding back in high school, and if I remember correctly, didn't we play lacrosse together like freshman year, right? I think that's when you and I hung out for a little bit during that time, and then I found skateboarding, and then I found 10th graders and 11th grade girls, which was a whole nother thing. So, but but yeah, so was it when at what point did you start that kind of bodybuilding journey? At what point were you starting to realize that you had control over sculpting your body? And once you did have that realization, how did you then go off and attack the areas that you wanted to attack within your own body?
A great question. So I would say probably as a junior in high school is when I made the decision that I kind of like this weightlifting stuff. And I think it was probably getting out of wrestling season, and as Sam Nang knows, man, like the shedding weight part was just rough. Like I would immediately go from, again, you're talking about 155. I was lighter than you when I was wrestling, right? So I was wrestling at 135,
Yeah.
And they allowed us 2 extra pounds over the course of the season. I don't remember kind of how that worked out, but so anyway, 137 basically through the winter time. You're freezing your ass off all the time because you have no body fat.
Yeah.
And then so, but the thing about the wrestling that was great for me, because lacrosse was my number one sport, and the conditioning of the wrestling, like I would run laps around people on the lacrosse field because I'd be coming fresh out of wrestling season, and it's like, oh, I was running bleachers just the other day. Let's do suicides, let's do hills, all this stuff. People are throwing up, and I'm like, let's go again. And so, but at the same time, I realized like, man, I am so freaking skinny. I was like, just feeling kind of the leverage again when especially because Palzotti was wanting me to do face off, get off. That was my ultimate iteration in lacrosse. I was the Fogo guy, and again, the wrestling background, low to the ground and whatnot. But there were bigger guys that would come out there that could really leverage on me. If you put shoulder to shoulder, they were kind of pushing me around. So I said to myself, like, man, if I could put on a little bit more weight and do a little bit more strength training. And then so when I started getting into bodybuilding, this is going to sound funny, but it's 100% true. The Arnold Schwarzenegger Modern Book of Bodybuilding was my Bible. It was. And I did 6 days a week that I was pumping iron and basically hitting a full body workout every 3 days. Yeah. And so while I don't think like someone like you who's naturally lean and long limbed is probably the worst thing you could do in that case. And so there's been iterations and things I've learned. And I'm not saying like that didn't help build the foundation. I absolutely attribute and say that's how I got most of my size and my shape, 100%. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about like you want to build your upper chest and you want to build certain body parts, it's kind of like someone saying like, well, I want to be leaner in my abs. And you got to understand that your body doesn't see it that way. Your body is going to basically pull energy systems as a whole. And I think one thing that I've always impressed upon people that are kind of just getting into the routine of things, like, hey, I want to put on muscle. If I see you doing an arm day in the gym, I'm going to come up and I'm going to slap you in the face. Because that's just, it's such a waste of time that really you need to be focusing on doing more compound movements. Yeah. And things that are going to engage some kind of a push or a pull system for your upper and your lower body. If you focus on those basic dynamics, you can structure a workout where you're hitting things more frequently. And especially unless, assuming that most people that are listening to this that are interested in bodybuilding want to get into this and say, hey, listen, if I don't want to take steroids, that is going to be your best way to do it. Because you can't possibly just crush your spirits with such a high volume unless, again, someone like Sam Nang, who's got a little bit more experience in getting the repetitions in, his body's conditioned for it. He's conditioned for that volume. Whereas, and I don't want to take anything away from somebody who does use steroids. I think if anything, I'm pro steroids. I'm pro steroids in sports. I think if you want to see these guys, competing for extended periods of time, sometimes it's something that they do it under a doctor's discretion. Again, not to get too up into the weeds of things, PEDs in sports and things like that, but I've got some information to dabble for sure.
Yeah. I think that's good content information about like steroids and stuff. Yeah. I'm in the field and the idea of natural bodybuilding and trying to produce testosterone naturally through heavy. And I when I emphasize and coach people, it's like heavy compound lifting. It's not bad for you, because there's a lot of times where people think like you have to designate like an arm day specifically for arms, but somebody like they've walked through me because I have like the most developed arms like in my body, and people will come and like, hey, what is your arm workout? I was like, I don't have a designated arm day. I have a push-pull day. I have a row day. I do a lot of rows. I do a lot of like push-downs and everything. And then that return like makes this bigger. But focusing on like the bigger muscles and stuff, it goes a lot longer. I think, I perfectly agree with what you're saying and stuff, which is cool. But yeah, I think the topic of discussion that I like to talk about is testosterone and like male hormones. Like I'm not in the medical field, I'm in the coaching and like physical field. So the information I get is from people that I coach and from my own research and my own experience and everything. But testosterone in like men, ways to, I think like, I guess keep it up, or like how do you measure testosterone? For me is like, I go by a lot of feel. Like if I'm productive, if I'm selling stuff, if I'm lifting heavy weights, if I'm sleeping good, like if I'm energized, I say, oh, I have a lot of testosterone in my body. If I'm doing a lot of stuff that that pushes me out of my comfort zone, I was like, I attribute it to having fairly high testosterone. So let me ask you, maybe how do you measure testosterone or healthy levels of it in, because that's a big importance of like bodybuilding and staying healthy, is like you got to have fair amount of testosterone to keep muscle on and build muscle.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I guess I think number one, the only way you really measure testosterone is getting blood work. Um, if so, the best way to kind of measure and see where your testosterone levels are at is you want to do it first thing in the morning. Most men, because testosterone is what we call diurnal, meaning that it changes in concentration over the course of the day. It's kind of like cortisol. Your cortisol levels aren't just elevated the entire time, otherwise you've got adrenal problems. Your testosterone, likewise, is going to be highest when you wake up first thing in the morning. Hashtag morning wood, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense, okay? Your testosterone is going to be highest in the morning. It's always a time you should check it if you want to get a true assessment for what your measurement is. The second factor is you have total testosterone and you have free testosterone. Total testosterone also takes into account that you have certain enzymes. You have proteins in your blood that your liver produces. One of them, sex hormone binding globulin, that actually kind of is like the carrier. It's like the vessel. But the problem is that testosterone can't bind with any of your cells until it is free of the sex hormone binding globulin. So getting your free testosterone versus your total testosterone is also important. So somebody might have a high total testosterone, but their free testosterone is actually quite low, which means that the actual effect is they're going to act like somebody who has low testosterone. So they go and they see their professional, they get tested for it, they have like reasonably high testosterone levels, but their free testosterone sucks and they don't know it. And they say, well, you don't qualify for testosterone replacement. Meanwhile, some other doofus who doesn't take care of his body comes in and he's suppressed things to high hell, and he has a lot of reasons that he could reverse things naturally, and he's getting a prescription for testosterone. So that's where I think the thing is a little bit twisted, is that like, don't get a testosterone prescription from your primary care doctor. I'm very skeptical about some of the new male and kind of men's health clinics specifically, and to be perfectly honest, and this will kind of be my first plug for it, is that I at some point in time, I think when orthopedics, it's time to hang the hat, because I'm still having fun right now. I think that's exactly what I want to get into, is something that is really derived more towards men's health. It's something that's always been a passion of mine.
Can you explain what orthopedic is? I'm not.
Yeah. So orthopedics is basically it's the medical field that deals with muscles, joints, bones, tendons, etc.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're the carpenters of medicine, essentially. And my subspecialty is spine surgery. So we see a lot of patients with, well, hopefully, that's the intention for the referral system, is chronic sciatica. Mm-hmm. We do see a lot of patients that come with chronic back pain, and I think one of my other messages to the world is, do not have surgery for chronic back pain. It's probably one of the worst decisions you can ever make, because there's a million and one things that can cause back pain. But anyway, that's my side note on that. So that's what orthopedics is, and I've been doing it for about 11 years. Started off working in Chicago, and our good mutual friend, Chef Tai Dang, is out there doing big things.
Yeah.
If you ever get out to Chicago, definitely hit up the restaurant Hai Su down in Pilsen. It's the south side of the city.
Yeah.
It's authentic Vietnamese food, and he puts his own little kind of special twist on it, and it's amazing. It's really good stuff, and he's doing some big things.
Give him and let him know. We'll see if we can get him on the show.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure he'd love that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be cool, man. Well, I got a couple things I want to unpack.
Yeah,
a couple things you just said, because some of that's hyper relevant to me right now. So we're
done with testosterone for a second. We're going back to orthopedics, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all the way back from like the testosterone into the orthopedics, and then the next journey. So there's that's what I'm saying. There's a lot to unpack.
Back on the show.
Yeah.
Let's start with the testosterone side of it, right? So I can totally appreciate that, and I feel like I might be in that category of high testosterone in the mornings and like early on, but the carrier testosterone throughout the day, I definitely feel the dip, which is why like getting on the bike and doing long bike rides and things like that, not only do I feel more grounded in the present in that moment, but that's also when I have like the most energy, and that's typically when you see me getting on social media and I'm like, fucking get it, like, because that's like literally me telling myself to fucking get it.
Yeah.
Just publicly, right? So what are some methods that you've discovered, natural methods or ways that you can help free up that, like release that carrier off of it, right? So you can get access to that testosterone throughout the day. Is there like things that you can do, natural remedies that you can do, things of that nature to help boost the testosterone throughout the day?
Yeah. So that's a great question, and I think right off the get-go, I think one of the most important factors that people undervalue for having healthy testosterone is sleep, and quality sleep at that too.
I'm
So I
plus.
think I'm a believer in using so I use an app called Sleep Cycle. So I don't want to sleep in my Apple Watch. I don't want to get one of the Aura rings and sleep in that necessarily. But having this app, basically, it is a program. If you guys aren't familiar, you just I set it on my nightstand next to me, and it kind of hears the sound. So like if I'm like having like a vivid dream and I'm talking or something, or the sheets are rustling and stuff, it's hitting all the sound waves, so it can tell how restful or restless my night's sleep was, the night before. So last night, admittedly, I guess I probably didn't get into bed until, it was 10:30 maybe, I think, when I got into bed. And but I was asleep, or I was in some kind of a REM cycle, apparently according to the app, for at least 80%, 85% of the time, which is
Good.
pretty good. So consequently, waking up saying like, well, I didn't quite get 7 hours sleep last night, but I actually feel pretty refreshed. But in any event, so like so getting quality sleep is number one. Number two is I think you took a great step, and I applaud you, man, with the sobriety. I think that's awesome. I think that's something that a lot of people could take some pages from and say, what would happen if I didn't drink for a month, right?
It's just pretty amazing.
And again, and seeing like the stark contrast, and I get it, it's fun, and you get creative, and you figure out some mock cocktails. And while I'm not sober, I'm not 100% sober. I'm very drinking, like kind of depleted for the most part. Like it really is something that I've pushed to the back burner quite a bit in emphasis.
Well, how alcohol? How, like, okay, when you said morning wood and stuff, like I feel like a fucking savage in the morning. That's why I head straight to the gym and just like and feel good for the rest of the day. But like alcohol, okay, so I've drank. I went sober. I'm not like completely sober. I like on
Right.
vacation, but it's like pretty much like throughout. If I'm not on vacation, I'm sober, right?
Yeah.
But like alcohol for like testosterone and like marijuana, like how much does that affect? Okay, I know that sleep is good. My quality of sleep is fantastic. I'll go back.
I would say in general, most of the literature points to say like if you're drinking more than 7 drinks a week, then you're probably having some negative effects on your body.
Okay. Yeah.
It's also kind of further extrapolated to more than 2 drinks in a sitting.
Yep.
And then as far as marijuana is concerned, there's definitely, some effects on sperm production. And so if you're having effects on sperm production, that means that whatever is taking a hit that suppresses that,
Yeah.
stimulating hormone is also probably taking a hit on your luteinizing hormone too, which are two of the hypothalamic hormones that stimulate testosterone and sperm production in the testes respectively. So it's because it's suppressing more gonadotropic level. Anything that does that and affects your sperm count, then yes, is going to affect your testosterone at the same time.
What's that fancy word you just said? No.
Gonadotropic hormones it's hypothalamic. Your hypothalamus is the middle part of your brain. There's like a little stalk that sits in the middle. That's your pituitary gland.
Yes.
And that's what secretes those hormones.
Okay.
So anterior and posterior pituitary. So that's kind of also going to be. There's other hormone regulation and function that's coming from that too. And I am admittedly a little bit shaky on the other hormones. Don't push me down the total endocrinology path, but that was my second landing spot. If I didn't get into orthopedics, didn't find an orthopedic job, I've always loved endocrinology. I've always loved the study of hormones. I think it's fascinating to me. So,
have you studied the pineal gland in the brain yet?
Yes, and I don't remember what it does.
Okay. So I did a lot of research on the pineal gland when I do a lot of like trauma, depression. I was reading the work of this Dispenza. He wrote a book called Becoming Supernatural. So it's like what it does. So Rene Descartes, the Italian philosopher, says that the pineal gland is the gateway to the soul. So when you learn this technique to release this hormone, it's called DMT. I think people take drugs like psychedelics to release the DMT.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like a breathing technique to activate the pineal gland, which basically is for me, it's like him explaining the modern way to be like enlightened, like to open up like your consciousness. Like I was telling like Danny, I was like, when I started doing this breathing technique, and I was going through a lot of like depression and like all these energy fields were being blocked and everything. I started doing this breathing technique, and I didn't know exactly what happened, but when I went back to read this book and stuff, things started to connect the dots and everything. And I was like, okay, this is like it's very spiritual, but in a way, Dr. Joe Dispenza explains it in a through metaphysics, through philosophy, and through uh, different things. And the brain in religion, it's like this is the third eye in Buddhism, and then in yoga, it's like this is the energy centers, or this is the crown chakra, this is the throat chakra, the heart chakra. But then he also explains it in like scientific terms, like there's these like energy fields that are actually like real, like the solar plexus, and you know how like a lot of things are. He explains it with like magnetism and energy fields that where they're like start to go coherent, and the breathing techniques pretty much like unlocks everything, all the energy fields. So when like now that I unlock that, the pineal gland and everything, it's like my memory is very sharp, it's very conscious and everything. It explains a lot where like I'm able to pick up a lot of stuff. So, but it's neat. It's interesting work. I can tell you
No,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And on the breathing technique, I also kind of think that's a lot of pH regulation in your body where just little dips, I mean, it's chemistry, right? It's little dips in becoming more basic versus more acidic completely changes and unlocks certain reactions and pushes things at a higher rate.
Yeah.
So, but that's cool, man. That's awesome that you did a little side studies, a little side hustle on that pineal gland. We'll hear more about this another time.
If it
Yeah.
if it helps me solve my problems,
Yeah,
I'm
Hey, that's
on
it,
this,
man.
like
yeah.
I love to solve my own problems and make me feel like very empowered.
Well, and also kind of, kind of going back to the original point and building in with what you just brought to the forefront is that, yeah, I mean, and I think if you take medications, there are certain medications that also will increase your sex hormone binding globulin. So that's
Yeah.
something else that will also kind of affect that. So again, yeah, any way that somebody could treat their depression by more natural means. That's why you hear people talk about having issues with libido when they take certain types of SSRIs. Guys having erectile dysfunction because of it, and again, I don't know if that has part to do if that's more of a neurotransmitter thing versus that could be something that actually affects the testosterone because of increasing the sex hormone binding globulin.
Hmm.
So we've knocked out. So sleep is important. What
Yeah.
you're putting in your body is important, and more specifically, again, less alcohol, more nutritious foods. Specifically, looking at essential fatty acids. So think of things that are monounsaturated fatty acids. So I think, and there's lots of stacks out there where it's like you can, taking fish oil can be helpful. Consuming kind of all types of nuts other than peanuts, basically. Cashews are also super high in fat too, and you don't get as much fiber with that. That's the only knock on cashews, but I love cashews. But thinking like pistachios, almonds, walnuts, pecans, those kinds of things, you just get the whole variety. But those types of fatty acids are think of those as like building blocks because testosterone essentially at the end of the day is a molecule of cholesterol that's just been kind of crafted and formulated in a way that says now all of a sudden we change this molecular structure that it's going to unlock potential within this cell to do X, Y, and Z. And it's not all just testosterone doesn't just bind with your muscle cells. When you're talking about again libido, energy, it's going to bind with your neuroreceptors too at the same time. And usually it's kind of the bi compound of it. So when testosterone breaks down, you're also looking at your dihydrotestosterone and estradiol. So estradiol gets kind of an interesting rap for bodybuilders, aka estrogen, and that you're thinking, oh, you want like 0% estrogen and you want all testosterone. And that actually could backfire because estrogen is actually the driver of what suppresses the overall production of your testosterone to begin with. So that goes back again, the medications, sleep, cortisol, those things can increase estrogen, to some degree. And the estrogen is the one that kind of gives the negative feedback to the brain that says, hey, we're good on the hormones. You can stop producing. You can just kind of shut it down a little bit.
I got
So,
one more technical question.
yeah.
Cholesterol. So I know good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, and the idea, like, I've never been to the doctor to get my cholesterol. And
Oh, I got to get that.
I believe cholesterol, what is cholesterol? Explain it to me. Like, and what side effects should I, like, if you were to tell me, if you were, like, consulting me, if I was feeling like something, like, because I'm all about, like, feel, you know, I haven't gone to the doctor because I feel fine.
Sure.
Right.
Well,
So,
you can feel testosterone. Unfortunately, you can't feel what your cholesterol is. That's
yeah.
only something that you find out down the road when you've got advanced cardiovascular disease because you've got plaques that have built up because of having too much bad cholesterol. So cholesterol is a carrier. So another reason, again, when you're talking about nutrition, like you can't be. This is Danny, for you especially, if you're somebody who's kind of a high endurance athlete who's like shredding a bunch of calories and stuff. Your nutrition that you get, especially from your essential fatty acids, is important to replete your good cholesterol production. And the cholesterol is one of those carriers, just like kind of like that sex hormone binding globulin blocks your testosterone and brings it and shuttles it around. The cholesterol is kind of the same thing. So cholesterol is basically a transport molecule in your body. You have the bad cholesterol, which is the low density lipoprotein, and good cholesterol is high density lipoprotein. Then you've got some kind of factors in between. There's like a very low density lipoprotein. There's a VLDL. And basically, so your LDLs and your VLDLs are the ones that think is like soft and squishy and fluffy. So if you're putting something like a slime into a pipe, it's going to kind of resonate. You're going to have some residue that kind of sticks on the sides of it. Whereas if you're pushing something solid like a marble down there, think of that as like the high density lipoprotein, that's going to go through seamlessly. It's not going to leave any residue behind. That residue of that bad cholesterol then all of a sudden gets kind of lodged into the vessel wall, the blood vessel wall, creates an inflammatory response. White blood cells go to the area, and then what happens? The inflammation ends up creating a plaque, and that plaque basically is like can be a calcification that happens on the blood vessel. And just think of these plaques kind of building up, and then it's like, well, we need some Drano to kind of go in there to clean it out. Well, the human body is not designed to take Drano to clear out your cardiovascular system. I mean, maybe some people might believe that, but they're probably no longer with us in that case. But that's where you're seeing the cardiologist and you're getting a stent. They put this basically like a little catheter that goes in there, and they take this little, like, it looks like a Chinese finger trap, and then they expand it, and it basically just kind of stretches out and it breaks the plaques, and it stays there. They keep it lodged in the blood vessel to keep it open. So I think it's very important, if you've never had your cholesterol checked, Sam Ning, definitely get your cholesterol checked because you should see where you stand.
Okay.
Some people, genetically speaking, no matter how impeccable your diet is, no matter how much you exercise, cardiovascular, weight-wise, you just have bad proportions of good to bad cholesterol, and that might be somebody that would again, from a long-term cardiovascular health standpoint, it's like you look at someone like Sam Ning, like, this guy's shredded. Like, how the hell is this guy going to have a heart attack? It's happened to more shredded people before, and part of it is because. The bad cholesterol causes that cardiovascular damage in the long run. So you want to know at least where you stand. I imagine yours is probably not bad. Even if you have family history of high cholesterol, that because of your exercise and your nutrition, I think that probably will help.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question on that, Ben. So I know that like biohacking is a buzz term right now, right? Like everybody's talking about biohacking, and everybody's very interested in nootropics and all sorts of different ways to live longer and live a better life and so on and so forth. And there's all these different programs out there to get your body scans and all of your different levels and your blood levels and things of that nature. And I think like there's a lot of validity to some of it. And I've actually even did a bunch of research into nootropics myself as well at one point. Specifically around cognitive function, just because I'm super ADD. But how much of that do you, like, with your knowledge base, right? How much of that do you actually apply into your life? Like, are you a subscriber to biohacking? And if so, how often do you get your levels checked? What's an appropriate kind of rate around that?
Yeah.
He wants to know. Go for your routine real quick. I want to know your routine. That's what I want.
Yeah, no. So this is kind of hilarious at the same time because I literally just got this huge panel of blood work. So I don't know if you guys have heard of Andrew Huberman by any chance.
Yeah, I know him. I like.
Name's familiar.
Huberman Lab is like my jam.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
there was a
Smart.
little bit of a scathing article that came out about him. We're not going to delve into it too much. We'd probably do another podcast for that. I still love the guy. I don't care what anyone says about him. Apparently, he's like a womanizer or something. But anyway, his information and all the things that he's talked about in terms of the biohacks has hit 100%. So this is not coffee, what I'm drinking right now. This is just lemon and water, basically. So when I wake up in the morning, I intentionally don't drink any caffeine for at least 90 minutes to 2 hours.
Yeah, that's from Andrew Huberman.
Correct. The other
Yeah.
thing is I'm big on the source of light, right? Setting the circadian rhythms is important. Like I wake up in the morning, I'm with the brightest freaking light you can put in my eye. It sucks, but it will help your ass to wake up. The other thing is I now have a really good stimulant-free pre-workout that I take. So no caffeine to it, but lots of nootropics. Got some lion's mane up in that house.
So open up.
And basically just it's nitrous oxide enhancers. I get an amazing workout from that. And then I'm astounded because I used to be like 200, 300 milligrams of caffeine, let's crush it and let's go. And then realizing, like, honestly, that probably was pushing me more towards the injury side of things. You almost get like a little psychotic, like in there and stuff like, I don't need rest. I'm going to go to the next set. Like, so I think I go and I work out now more intentionally, but I can still push myself because of, again, maybe it's something in the nootropics. Maybe it's just the way that my skin's tingling from probably all the niacin that it has in the supplement. But I take that, and I'm also a big subscriber in terms of other supplements. Every morning starts off with a protein shake. So I usually work out fasted. Let me also kind of rephrase that. So got my lemon water. I'll do a workout fasted with the pre-workout. I also do, I'm going to sound like a total Huberman plug here because all this stuff has eventually been plugged on his show, but it's like, it's good stuff. I have an electrolyte mix that I add to the water after the pre-workout's done called Element. And Element is, it's like liquid IV.
Yeah.
You're done. Your days are over, right? You put sugar and unnatural crap in there. This is literally just like salt. Might be a little bit of a flavoring that's like all natural. So it's like grapefruit, you got this like mango chili. It's amazing. And so I like doing that afterwards because again, you feel less crampy. So so the pre-workout, the salt, then I come back, I do a protein shake. So I've got this grass-fed whey protein, and that you don't have to go grass-fed whey protein, but whey protein is still kind of that top standard as far as, there's proteins that are going to be more available to your body through digestion than others.
Yeah.
So somebody who is, say, a vegan, for instance, right, doesn't consume any dairy or meat products, they have a harder time trying to get the essential amino acids that are going to get them to again, build their muscles back up. Now, you tell that to Tom Brady, right? The guy kind of figured it out, but at the same time, it's like, it depends on what kind of physique you're looking for. And I do think there is, it's strange, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but there definitely is when you look at like vegan bodybuilding versus traditional bodybuilding, right? I think there's something to it. I think I'd be curious if they check the testosterone panels on all of them. And again, it's not to say that you can't do anything unless your testosterone is X high.
Yeah.
But just something about the nutritional intake that stimulates that more.
Yeah.
But anyway, whey protein, that's my go-to. I do like a cup of some kind of like cherries, blueberries, mango, some kind of a fruit. That is like my fruit serving for the day. And for the most part, the rest is just vegetables, as far as fruits and vegetables.
Yeah. Vegetables.
And then I'll do a scoop of I go to Costco and I get this big like 11-ounce jar of nut butter. So it's everything but peanuts, like what I was telling you. So it's against the almonds, pistachios. It's got chia seeds, pumpkin seeds. It's delicious, and that's again some essential fatty acids right there. And then I've got this vitamin D elixir. It's a liquid form that has medium chain triglycerides that basically. So, not to delve too much into the weeds here, but think you've got essential fatty acids. Medium chain triglycerides is basically just kind of a shorter, more compact version of that actually can be used for energy.
Yeah.
And so basically the vitamin D, which is a fat soluble vitamin, if you're on a low fat diet, you're probably going to suffer from absorption from some of those vitamins in particular, A, E, K, and D. So vitamin D is important. Danny, you're in Colorado, right?
No, I'm in Florida.
You're in Florida. Okay. Well, I know you're getting plenty of sun either way. And Sam, you're still back in VA, right?
Yeah, I'm in Winchester. The sun here is not so great during the wintertime.
Yeah.
Like I try as much like 20 at least like 20 minutes, but it's still cold.
Sure.
And I do and vitamin D during the wintertime, but am I as consistent? But I do sleep a lot. I can tell
Yeah.
you that
Yeah.
a lot wintertime.
So getting outdoors, getting more sunlight, that's critical. That's going to replete some of your vitamin D. And like I said, if you don't have that luxury, you should be on a vitamin D supplement. And this
Yeah.
is now the kind of the orthopedic side coming on and saying that like patients that don't heal fractures, patients that have decreased bone density, a lot of that can happen from kind of the vitamin D metabolism. Obviously, there's other
Yeah.
factors that come into it too, but
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
No, that's interesting, man. I appreciate that insight. So that
sure,
brings me to my second question that I
yeah,
want to unpack. So now this is the orthopedic side.
yeah.
So
Let's
my
go down the list
I've
of injuries.
had,
I'm ready.
dude, it's bad. So Achilles, two ACLs on the right side, lost
Ooh.
60% of my meniscus on the right side, ACL on the left, scaphoid on my left wrist, two shoulder surgeries on my right side.
What kind
I
of
think
shoulder
that's
surgeries?
it. I had my labrum and my rotator cuff torn twice, and the second one that I did, I dislocated it with my arm up. So I was doing a trick on a jump. I landed like this, like diving down the landing, and my elbow or my shoulder dislocated into my armpit,
Yeah.
and I was stuck like this. And I actually that one was crazy because the ski patrollers didn't know what to do. They were trying to brace me like this and then send me 2.5 hours down to the hospital. I was like, no shot. I was in the most pain I've ever been in. So I actually reset it myself in ski patrol. They didn't know how to reset it, and I literally walked them through and told them how to do it and got it in, man. And oh my god, it was like better than any sex I've ever had. Right? It was
Yeah.
like the most amazing experience to get that in.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were shy of a ladder J. They were going to do a ladder J on my shoulder, which
Oh, no.
if you're familiar with that, but for those that aren't, it's basically they like take parts of your bone and restructure your bone in your shoulder, and if you blow it out one more time, you're basically getting a shoulder replacement.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the last straw of like shoulder surgeries. So it was bad. So had all those surgeries throughout, and actually since I was 20 up until this year, if I make it to July of this year, I will break my curse. But up from the time that I was 20 up until about 2 years ago, I've had a surgery, an orthopedic surgery, every 2 years
Man.
throughout my life. And so, long story short, around that and all those, and like by the way, like I PT'd my left knee properly. My Achilles, when I blew out my Achilles, I was back on snow 3 weeks after post surgery
Oh man.
because that was my life, right? Like that's how I made my living was coaching. So I had ins with the boot manufacturers, so I had a custom boot built for me that was like a
Yeah, I
3D
can see
boot.
that being okay, but yeah.
It wasn't okay. It was really stupid. It was really bad. And now like I have a baby calf on my right side, like my right leg's atrophied. So long story short to this, just recently, it started 2 years ago. I started getting really bad sciatica for the first time. I've never experienced it before, and it was like unreal the amount of pain that sciatica is, and it's just very chronic, right? So I had that, and then it flared up again. So I quit drinking. I started biking. That started dying down. I took a month off from biking, and then I did a 50-mile race, and then it flared back up for like 2 months. So my wife finally just booked me a chiropractic appointment, which I was like, I'm still skeptical about my chiropractor, and it's funny he knows it, but I'm actually experiencing a lot of great results from it. But one of the things that I realized in that process was, so they did a scan, and I've always had bad posture. I've always had my shoulders forward, and my neck. When they did the scan, if I did my profile, you can even see it right now. My head sits forward, and my head sits forward by about 2.5 inches,
Hmm.
and I didn't like that. I never liked that about myself. And I always knew that I had this kind of like hunched over, protected look. So he started working on my back. My posture got better. My sciatica started to go away. It's actually gone. I haven't had a flare up since I started going to the chiropractor. And then this is the part that's interesting, and this is where I kind of want to pick your brain on. So what I realized, and I just had this conversation with my chiropractor yesterday, what I realized was about 3 weeks ago, I was just standing there with my kids, and I realized I was standing in my skeleton. I was relying on my skeleton, and I wasn't activating my muscles to hold my body up. And when I was doing that, two things happened. One, I started feeling pain in all sorts of different places, right? And I was just like, man, I'm just like really uncomfortable. The other thing that happened is I had the natural urge to move. I wanted movement, right? And so I started feeling very compelled to get back on my bike, to start running again. And not because I was like, oh, I want to do this for my personal health. It was more of like a bodily feeling and reaction to my body, that my body was telling me, hey, Danny, you need to move.
Yeah.
So I think what's happened is in my lower back and like my L2, L3, I have some inflamed discs. That's what my chiropractor seems to think. I haven't gotten an X-ray or anything. I'm not getting back surgery. It's a whole nother story for another time. I'm done with surgeries, ideally. I've had my fair share. So, but
You
I
better at
started.
least contact me if anyone tells you need back surgery, because I'll give you the full rundown.
Absolutely, man.
Makes sense.
Absolutely.
Got your back,
So,
man.
That's it.
Yeah,
So
right.
you're saying you specialize in the sciatic side, and I know a lot of my friends have had it. And shy of going to like, what do you see that is it the skeletal? Is it the fact that people inherently get lazy in their own body, not intentionally, but they just start relying on their skeleton? Because I think that's what kind of started happening to me. Is that after I've had these surgeries, I got weaker, I gained the weight, I lost the weight, and I just started sinking into my skeleton, and I wasn't activating my muscles even while standing. Like, even if I do this right now, if I stand straight, my back pain goes away. Versus if I relax into my skeleton, I can feel it in my lower back.
Well, so what's happening when you relax into your skeleton, and this is actually, it's not. I've got one of my cool little models somewhere. I think it's in my car. It's got the screws and the rods in it and stuff, but just to kind of show you what a disc level looks like. So when you're slouched, when your back is rounded, like if this is the normal curve to your spine and the creases of my fingers are your discs, when you're coming forward, you're basically putting maximal compression across those discs. So probably what you have is you have a chronic disc herniation. It's not at your L2, L3, so your chiropractor's wrong, unless you had a massive disc herniation that would hit your sciatic nerve. Because the higher up in your spine it goes, the more the compression has to be to trigger your sciatica. Most people are going to have problems in their lower discs. There's 5 bones in your low back, and a disc is basically numbered for the bones it sits in between. So the lowest disc in your back is your L5, 5th lumbar vertebrae, and your S1. S1 is the first part of this triangle of bone that sits between your butt cheeks. That's your sacrum. And that's 8 fused vertebrae that have all these little holes in it where there's nerves that are coming out.
So I said it wrong. That's exactly what he's talking about. It's in the lower limb. So when I thought the L2, L3, whatever is low, I don't know my stuff.
Hey, you at least said L. I've had people who's like, it's like my
L.
R5, and I'm like, I'm an R vertebrae. Okay. But I think I know where he's coming from, like left and right. But anyway, so probably L5S1. And probably, again, there was a snowboarding or a skating or some kind of injury where you tweaked your back in a way that herniated a disc, and that disc has kind of sat there for a while. So you're right. So the adjustments can be helpful. The postural correction is probably the most helpful. The core activation, making sure that you're kind of up tall on your skeleton and not waiting on your disc. Because every time you compress on that disc, it's like blowing a bubble, right?
Yeah.
And that bubble's going to get a little bigger, and it's going to start to bump on that nerve, and that's what triggers the sciatica. And the important thing of that too is that I'll have patients who come in the office and say like, man, I've got this sciatica, and you get MRIs and you say like, dude, your spine's clean. Like you know, there's no compression whatsoever. There's plenty of other places where your nerve can get compressed along gluteal fascia. Your piriformis muscle can also cause issues with sciatica. You could have, tightness in your hamstrings too. That could also kind of irritate your sciatic nerve as well. So there's a lot of things that can kind of trigger that. So for me, the number one question I ask people when people say I have sciatica, how far down does it radiate? Like if you're talking about going all the way down to your foot and the bottom of your foot snum, that tells me that there probably is a greater severity either just in the inflammatory factor or in the actual compression that person has. The other things that trigger me from going to discussion to say like, you know what, we're probably going to skip the physical therapy and the chiropractor is, again, if somebody has, and I say objectively, like you could tell me, say, hey, I can't feel this part of my foot. If I go in there and I touch it in 2 different points and you say, yeah, I can feel that, right? They're basically telling me that they have altered sensation, but they still have sensation. Whereas if I go and say like, no, I can't feel that at all, right? That objectively, meaning like I'm testing it at 2 different points and they're saying I have no sensation. that means that there's a sensory branch of that nerve that's greatly being affected. The other thing would be if somebody comes in, they have weakness. Like when I come in and have people that I strength test them, right? You go up on your tiptoes. If you see someone kind of like can't quite, toe raise as high on one side as the other, then usually you think there's some kind of a lag. It's like, again, like there's a filter. There's some kind of a buffer on that nerve signal that muscle can't contract at full force. That's another thing that kind of hints me to say, this person probably needs an MRI, need to take a closer look at things. So yeah, I would be very curious to see if it came back, if it came something you couldn't just treat going to the chiropractor, getting x-rays would be first step, then maybe an MRI. But I applaud you that you were more proactive in the sense that going to the chiropractor, like me sending somebody to physical therapy, a lot of times people come into the office, and I think the other, again, shameless plug here is that I would like to, at some point in time, start up a side business that I'm going to call Indiana Spine Line for right now, okay? And basically what it is, it's a virtual kind of like orthopedic / spine consulting virtual service where it's like you don't even have to go to your doctor. You tell me what's going on, like we're having this conversation right now. I'm going to point you in the right direction. I'm going to save you a lot of time and a lot of money going to see some doctors like, why are you here? I don't know if I can even do anything for you. See you later, right? So a lot of people need the direction, right? I get it that not everybody went to medical school. So understanding these things and picking up a lot of things along the way, trying to stay off of YouTube and Google and whatnot and WebMD and getting the information from somebody like me who's seen this for 11 plus years. And again, there's a rubric that kind of, you point people in a certain direction and say, hey, this is probably better off if you just go see a physical therapist, because not only people are kind of obsessed that they want an answer for something. I'm not saying that that's you, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I applaud you the fact that you went straight to get the treatment, right? I can just tell you, and I tell patients, I say, listen, you don't need an MRI. This is an unnecessary expense. In a world where healthcare is too expensive and we're spending way too much, it's because of the willy-nilly diagnostic testing this, diagnostic testing that, and you're sending patients that have insurances that don't cover it. And then that gets floated back to the general population to say that's why everything is inflated with taxes and whatnot. But not getting into that. So for me, my directive is to try to say, let's send you somewhere it's going to get better. I'm going to say, listen, congratulations, you have bulging discs. If I don't have an MRI, it doesn't matter because it doesn't change the treatment, right? Getting advanced imaging studies are something to say, like, how is this going to affect my decision in terms of what you need to do? And I will tell you that 99% of the time, anyone is going to benefit from going to a chiropractor or going to a physical therapist to treat their various orthopedic ailment, period, right? Mm-hmm. Unless you're like, I can't walk, or something where you're like, this pain is so bad I might need to go to the emergency department, go to the emergency department. But most things walking into your office, like I said, if they haven't done the physical therapy, I'm kind of in a bind. If I wanted to order an MRI for them, even if it's someone who's really active like yourselves, if they haven't had an evaluation by somebody else as an outside authority, it's like I'm probably going to be stuck on the phone with their insurance trying to argue with why this person needs an MRI. So anyway, that was probably a little too much of a tangent on that, but I'm not sciatic is better, and the posture definitely is critical to get things lined up. I do subscribe to that, and I think that we chiropractors and orthopedic spine, we can kind of speak a common language. And I will say that there are some patients I will actually refer to chiropractors over physical therapy. If somebody's been to physical therapy, it hasn't worked for them. Sometimes, again, they need the outside the box approach, and it can be something as simple as that. They just need to be part of a program that they buy into, and anything that promotes them to be more active. That's what it is at the end of the day. Right.
No, and that actually, you teed up exactly what my third question was in my unpacking of your story, which is the next phase, because you're like, I think I'm almost done with orthopedic stuff. I'm going on to the next thing. So that's your next thing then?
Well, like I said, that's something I've actually started to kind of write out a business plan for. And again, if my wife wasn't in her own business and just in the shits every day as far as the stuff she has going on, right? So I love my job now. In fact, I woke up this morning, I'm extremely blessed to say, like, I got a pay raise. I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm working kind of the same, but I'll take it. You know what I mean? So my job takes care of me. They're doing a great job. I love the surgeon I work with. He is hilarious. We've got great banter in the clinic. He's just under a year older than me. So it's like bro time when you're going in there. I'm not working with some guy that's like 60, whatever, getting ready to retire. And here's the keys to my practice. It's like we're building something. We both have common beliefs, and I think that that's really important.
I think that is
So,
important. I
yeah.
think that you shared today was very insightful because one, it helps me because I like to stay on top of my game, but also to pick other people's brain in different fields so I can learn what they're seeing as well too. I'm be open minded.
So
Andrew.
you need to get some blood work, Sam Nang. You let me review it, okay?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's blood work and then checking my cholesterol. That's something that
Yeah.
I've had. I don't like. I feel healthy, but I just got to get a better understanding as well too.
And, and if you don't have a primary care doctor, or you're kind of apprehensive about that, there is. So I actually didn't go through my doctor for this one, even though I totally could have. I used a company called Inside Tracker. And again, that's another one of those shameless Huberman plugs that he's plugging all the time. But it's a good program, and the blood test that they order is it's a pretty solid panel. It kind of give you a good baseline about kind of where you stand, where you're at, what you need to do to change it. I'm waiting to see what the consultant comes back with. If they tell me anything I didn't know, I'll definitely message you guys and let you know if I find something new about my body that I need to change. Like, oh, I've apparently been eating like shit, and I need to do this and do that. So, but we'll see.
No, that's cool, man. So let me ask you, because I know we are getting closer to time. Yeah. I have met a lot of people in the business community. I'm out in the Tampa community quite a bit. I'm fairly active in a lot of different things. Actually, Sam Nang and I were just talking about that. And a lot of business owners that deal with high stress, which if you're a business owner, as you're experiencing with your wife, it is what it is, right? Like, it's just, that's the nature of the beast. Actually, Hormozy just did, I was reading some of his content this morning. So if you're not familiar with Alex Hormozy, Ben, Sam Nang and I are pretty big subscribers to his stuff and what he puts out there. Definitely check it out, especially $100 million offers if you're planning on doing your own business venture. Brilliant. It's probably the best business book I've ever consumed.
$100 million offers. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Best business book I've ever consumed, especially for starting out a new venture, new business. But so I meet a lot of these folks, right? High stress, typically lots of alcohol, especially because bulk of them are in sales, right? If you're a business owner, you're the number one salesperson of the business, which means that you're networking, which means that you're drinking and all this other stuff. And I got a whole another tangent about networking without drinking and how much more beneficial it is. But anyways,
I think I actually saw that. I saw that little plug. That was great. Yeah.
It's amazing, man. It's a total game changer. But so these business owners, very frequently they are stationary at a desk. They are struggling to get out and get exercise. I mean, some of them are like crushing it, don't get me wrong, but for the most part there's a lot of them that aren't. A lot of them with back problems, a lot of them with like spinal injuries and things like that, and not even injuries is the right word, but just chronic
degeneration.
Yeah,
we call it. Yeah.
So I would love to refer them over to you on like the consultation side, because I think that's brilliant, and I think you actually have hit the nail on the head with a niche that is underserviced and in high demand, right? And that is like, even for myself, I mean, think about it. I just paid $2,500 for a 6-month program with a chiropractor out of my pocket, right? Willingly. And by the way, I can go off on another tangent on the chiropractic sales journey that I went through, which was fucking brilliant. But, like literally after I did my first assessment, I'm like, here's my money. Whatever, do it. Whatever you're doing, whatever voodoo magic you're doing, do it.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I would have gladly have paid $100 to $200, maybe $300 or $400. Like I paid $150 for a massage that gave me 18 hours of relief. Right. And then it came back. So like, I think that there's a lot of people that you've hit the nail on the head on. So I would love to push them over your way. Yeah. I know that you're saying it's a side hustle thing to start, but I mean, do you have like a basic package or anything like that, or like a basic offer that you would do? Like, do you do like a 1-hour consult? Like, how does that work? Because I would love to.
Yeah, it's so again, there's a lot of things that are still in the works, and I think right now my one sticking point is the fact of providing medical advice for somebody who's outside of my state, right? So right now, like my next step is to talk to a medical attorney and say, hey, listen, if I start doing some advice, etc. Now, again, the only thing I would say is that my Body by Ben 1985 Instagram. So I've got 3 of them. One's kind of like my nerd space, and one of them is my my standard, and then I have my bodybuilding / kind of health promotion one. That I could build out that brand a little bit more too, and that might be one of those ones that, again, with all the disclaimers and things like that, kind of set aside to say, here's my background, here's what I know, and then kind of figure out some kind of a packaging system from that. That probably would be the fastest way to get that set up. But,
so just get them connected to your. So we'll share that link
Yeah, we
the
do
description.
this in our messenger. Just include your Instagram and
Sure.
information, so we can plug it as well too, and we'll include it in the show notes. That's what we try to do for our guests to help promote.
And that's a great. I love that entry point too, because then it's just like any of these guys that I talk to, these business owners are like, "Oh, my back."
Watch
I'm
this.
like, hey, you need to follow Body by Ben. Have you followed him? Do you know who this guy is? You don't know who he is?
Yeah,
Like everybody knows who he is. You know what I mean? Like that's the way that you do it, right? That's something that you have to.
Well, the funny thing about that, because again, that was also kind of like, that was everything orthopedics is like, again, like I think probably what I need to do is I need to just establish kind of a back specific one or a spine specific one. And that was going to be that Indiana spine line. So that might be, I'll keep you guys up to date on that. But in the meantime, honestly, it just even, I would be more than happy to say, like, if you've got just a bud that says, dude, my back has been killing me, you know, talk to my buddy Ben. He works in orthopedics and spine surgery, and he'll kind of set you straight. And let that kind of be the platform that launches off. We'll do a free consultation and say, hey, man, let's talk about it. If you got some images you can share with me, I'll take a look at them and let you know what's going on. And this is what I do with my patients here right now currently. Yeah. And if they can kind of get that exposure and say, yeah, this is legit, then we know we've got a jump point, right? So I'm going to hold my feet to the fire in that case and say, let's make sure that this is worth it to them, and I'm willing to give out that service for free right now because I have the time for it. I like doing it. So it's kind of like, even though we don't like to drink and network to full efficiency, that is one thing that, like, if you get like 1 or 2 drinks in me, I will talk about your orthopedic problems the rest of the night if I'm at a party. That's me. That's how I roll. I can't help it. It's fun.
Right.
I like problem solving.
Since you challenged David Neal for the third show or for the third,
David Neal, I'm coming for you, bud. I'm coming for you, man. I've learned some things. This old dog's learned some new tricks.
I have a competition in October in Baltimore.
Okay.
In Baltimore. That's plenty of time for prep, right? So my is, if anybody wants to compete at that show, I think we need at least like 6 bodybuilders. Whoever wins that show gets a pro card. And I've been I've gotten second place 3 times. So my goal is to get a pro card at this show. So I'm saying my challenge is, if you guys want a show to compete in, I need some competitors at this show. It's in Chesapeake. It's an OCB competition.
Sure.
So it's fairly local. Where are you, in Chicago?
Indianapolis right now.
Indianapolis. Okay. I don't know. I don't know if it's something that you'd be willing to do, but I think that I'm throwing it up there. I'm competing in October. I could put the dates and everything. I don't know the exact date. Sometime in October. So
if I'm ready to compete this year, but I would definitely come and support.
Okay.
So.
Well, yeah. When do you think you would compete with, or are you just calling out David?
Just calling out David in general.
Okay.
But again, I thought the idea of approaching another decade of life, that it seemed kind of like perfect to say, dude, it's been more than 20 years. Like, we need to settle this chapter. You know what I mean?
100%,
That's
man.
Good story, man.
Right? That's what I'm saying,
funny.
man. It's like we've diverted off a little bit, and I think, like, you probably were with me at the reunion. We were talking to Quan a little bit, and she said that he's kind of become a little bit like recluse, like doesn't really keep in touch with anybody and stuff. So maybe this would also be like a twofold thing that kind of, you know, brings him into a more positive aspect of his life. Maybe he's having some troubles. You don't know. So, but I'd love to reconnect with that guy for sure on the real. Yeah. So just like reconnecting with you guys has been awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad that we were as well too, and I think I'm in that phase of life as well too, where I'm fine. But I had my corporate job, my business, and everything. I had my fitness passion. So that's why we created this podcast. I'm literally just brainstorming, asking questions, getting coaching other people, and figuring out. So in the process of putting like offers in, Danny's coaching me, and it's been a fun journey. It's been an exciting journey as well too. And, you know, we're all sharing it, and you know, I anything but success. And if there's anything that you need support from us, what we'll do is we'll put your information and you can share with your network. And hopefully this becomes like your launching pad to new, 2.0 Ben of bodybuilding, like being the best version of himself and everything. So glad you could be part of the show today.
Appreciate you
Speaking,
guys.
before we drop though,
Yeah.
speaking of coaching, I gave you a challenge, Sam Nang, last week
Oh,
or on Monday.
oh yeah, I did it.
You did it? You talked to a random guy?
So here's what I did. I think it was on Tuesday. So I started off. I went to the gym. I was like, all right. So the homework was that I had to go talk to random people and validate my offer. Basically, it's a 3 months coaching program that I'm putting together with modules, one-on-one coaching, templates, and live coaching calls and stuff like that. So that's what. So I pitched it to a person that I didn't know at the gym, but see him frequently to kind of warm up, and he liked the idea. The question was, I did a pitch and I asked him, I was like, do you see value in it? He says yes, right? So the coaching practice, like, you saw value in it. But I asked him, how much would you pay, say, on a monthly basis or a total package? He gave me a number like $100. Okay. And I told it another girl at the gym that I talked to regularly, and she saw value in it, right? I just put it, I was like, is this in a female version? Would you buy something like that? She said yes. But then I went to the mall and I talked to like 4 people. And one person saw value in it, but was like, I'm not paying for that. And most of the people in the mall were like, no, life coach, whatever, too expensive, blah, blah, blah. But then I reached out to another friend of mine and pitched the idea and said that it was a good idea. He could see the value in it and everything. And I told him I'll reach out to him when the offers and stuff. So he was open to it. So I did market research, and then I talked to my coach and kind of explained the same thing to. He's like, I think the offer or the idea is a good starting point. So put me in a good place where, like, I know, like, hey, this is the type of customers I want to work with. These are some of the customers that I know don't give a fuck about what I'm selling. They were like, no, I have no fucking clue. Life coaching, personal training, I don't need that in my life. So it's like, okay.
Dude, no, that's great, man. Good job. So I owe you some pull-ups. So
Yeah.
Ben, you get to watch me do some pull-ups here in a sec.
Yeah.
But so here, the one thing I'll leave you with, right, on that end. So that's awesome that you did that, and fucking hats off to you for that, man. Congratulations on doing that.
You guys both still have your hats on. I took my hat off.
Oh, hats off, bro. There it is. No, that's seriously, man. That's truly awesome, man. That takes a lot of balls, and it's not easy to do. And you'd be surprised how many business owners I tell them to go do that, and they won't do it because they're like, which is the wildest thing to me. If you run your own business, like, you have to be comfortable talking with strangers. You have to be talking with like random people that you see on the street, and you got to put yourself vulnerable out there to just get the feedback.
Oh yeah,
right.
Getting
and
the feedback
part. Yeah, dude, it's you get the fuck you get the hell no, but then you also get the interested, the yes, and then you start getting, like, to your point, like what you just said, like $100 a month. Okay, $100 a month, that's great. So how many of those do you need? You know, like on a recurring basis, so on and so forth. So you can start to like actually chart out the map on that to start to help build the business model. But more importantly than even just that part of it is you are now that much wiser on what your core message is. And now imagine if you talk to 1,000 people. Imagine how much more valid that's going to become. So I'm a big stats guy, right? Like, I'm a big into numbers. Yeah. So at a bare minimum, you need 20 sample size, like a 20 random sample to have any statistical relevance, right? At a bare minimum. And that's really, I think that number should be increased, just my stats background, but that's the standard. If you can push that across over 1,000 calls, right? That's literally what we do in my organization. When I do lead generation for companies, before we do any social media, any digital marketing, anything, we go and we call 1,000 of their people with what they think is the best script to typically prove them wrong, because most business owners are wrong because they're all very inward and transactional and they just care about growing their bottom dollar. They don't actually have enough empathy and care for the audience. Yeah. But that's one part of it. But then the other part of it is then we apply our scripts and the way that we communicate, and we find the commonalities that we get the conversions. And once we have a statistical relevant conversion, such as like a 20% conversion rate to a meeting, then we take that and now we take that message and we scale. Yeah. So what you're doing right now is 100% what you need to keep doing. And now you need to go get volume. You need to get volume on that.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to measure your baseline of the core message, the core offer, and everything else. And that is the kick. That's the ticket that you need to actually scale this thing, to then push out the social media ads, the funnels, all this other shit that you can do, all these other, vehicles in which you can share your message to get interest and get attention. But the first step is exactly what you're doing. So fucking proud of you, man. So that I got to do this now.
It was definitely tough.
All right. I'm watching Bang at these pull-ups too, and then I'm going to get to my 20 conversations at a minimum today for, again, here's why your back doesn't need surgery, et cetera.
Yeah, this is it. Let's see if I can get my camera turned around here to my door. It's not going to be long. Don't worry. It's not like I'm no David Goggins over here. Let's see.
Got it. You can see it.
That.
Look at that.
Go with the neutral.
Nice. 2.
Ooh, 20, huh?
4.
Ooh. You can kip. You can kip it.
Start yelling. Who's gonna row the boats?
You got to scream high, scream low. All right, so he owes you 13 more over the course of the day. It's all good.
Here's 7.
7.
Hey, man, not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad.
Keep doing it.
We're getting somewhere.
The only way pull-ups is pull-ups.
Something else for your back when you're talking about posture. You ever just hang on that thing?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I was gonna say, hang on that thing, doing some lower abdominal stuff, nice, slow and controlled. See if you can hold your body like an L. Like hang on it and pull your legs up to 90 degrees and just sit there as long as you can. Straight as you can, as straight as you can, your back straight as you can, your legs like literally 90 degrees at your pelvis. That's my challenge for you. Until next.
All right.
So, yeah,
until
all right, guys.
Ben,
appreciate it, man. This has been a great time.
Hey, thanks, Ben, for being on here. Super inspiring around it. I think there's a ton of information. Definitely excited to share this around. Be sure to send over any links that you want us to promote.
Yeah.
And I'll do our outro and we'll call it. So thank you guys again. This is FIFO, Flow In, Flow Out. We're here to help raise the collective vibrations. We got Ben Anderson on the call today. It was absolutely awesome. Keep an eye out. We release these things every Monday at 6 a.m., Friday at 4 p.m. I believe, Ben, this will come out in about a week from today. We'll send you over all the show notes and everything else and the clips and all that great stuff to share. But that's it. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
All right, brother.
Deuces.
All right. Thank you.
See ya.